So, the Mk3 MX-5, the black sheep of the family. Well, at one point it certainly was, but it seems to be appreciated now. People are finally starting to come around that it wasn't so bad after all. I made the gamble of buying one. 2.5 years later, let's find out if I'd do it again. Welcome back to another episode of Petrol Poodle. It is a 2.5 year update, the longest I've actually even had a car before. It's been mostly fantastic, but there have been ups and downs, to be perfectly honest. I have actually fallen in and out of love with this car many times. And so I'm going to run you through the things that I've loved, liked, the unforeseen things, the problems, running costs, stuff like that really, and what my advice would be to you today. Okay, so for YouTube engagement's sakes, I could leave the dislikes till last and keep you waiting to find out, but I think we should mix it on its head. Let's start with what's been a bit turd, because that's what you want to know, isn't it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it up into what I believe to be design flaws and things that would basically apply or be, you should consider for anyone getting an MX-5, the reliability issues that have hit me specifically, and also subjectively, just things that bother me that might not bother you. So onto the first design flaw, which is actually the headlights. No, they work fine, but when you need to change a headlight, what happens? Well, you're supposed to take the fucking wheels off. That's right, you have to take the wheels off and go through the back to get to the headlamp. What a stupid design. And you think, well, that's not going to be too bad. It'll probably be on the way home from work, won't it? Wrong. We were driving around Cornwall in the evening when one of the headlights went out. And we went to Halfords the next day, said, can you change this for us? I don't have any tools on me. Obviously, I'm on holiday. And they said, oh, sorry, we can't do that. We can't take the wheel off and play around with the car. We're not supposed to do that. So I then had to go to another garage and get somebody else with a bit more nous to move the battery terminal around. It's not that light, I think. They had to move the battery terminal around to get their little baby hands in. And they did manage to do it without getting the wheel off, but pretty dumb design. Okay, design flaw number 2 is the boot. Okay, we know it's small, fine. We all made that decision when we buy one, okay. But really, when you compare it to other cars, you do really start to notice that this car is quite restricted. And for long trips away, you'd really want a boot bag or something like that if you were to go abroad with it, for example. But the big design flaw is that there's no button to open the boot on the boot. And so what a lot of people have done, doing stuff, put their keys to one side, shut the boot, and they've locked their car keys in the car and they're miles away from home. It does happen, and I fear it every time I use this damn boot. Why did I have to use the key? Well, on to reliability, my central lock-in's gone. So can't open this with the button, there's no buttons here. Even the button on the inside doesn't open the boot anymore. I have to use the key, which is really annoying in this day and age. But, oh well. Next design flaw. It is very, very, very small, cramped interior. Okay, I do actually love what the whole car stands for, and it's fine. I've had the car 2.5 years, so it can't be that bad. But it's when you get into a different sports car that you realise just how little space you've been given here. And, look at this. My knees here don't really have anywhere to go. I've actually dropped this seat by 2 inches with the JAS Performance thingies, and that's made this better. But before that, I was even closer. I was kind of like up here. I've done 6 to 8 hours for long trips. It's been fine, but there's no movement, there's no adjustment in this, and you are really cocooned in. Okay, on to reliability. Actually, where it counts, this car has been extremely reliable, just as I predicted it would be, and I do still have complete peace of mind when I drive it, but it has had a few issues. The only thing that's left me stranded was a seized brake caliper, actually, and for some reason, they're nearly always driver front right. So that stopped me. The garage said, yeah, we see this quite often, it's always that one. The rear parking sensors, they've completely given up. They don't work anymore. I don't need them, you don't need them either, but it's just annoying that they're there and they should work. But other than that, it has been very, very good. The odd creak and rattle here and there, and then they actually tend to clear themselves up. But no, overall, I have complete trust. And if anyone knows me long term, reliability PTSD does my head in from all my bad cars I've had. And this doesn't give me any anxieties. I do know that it will work. So the last thing I said I was going to do was subjective things. Now, we're stood here by the roll bar, which is the perfect time for this. If you haven't seen my roll bar video, then I'll click on the link somewhere. It'll be there. But I witnessed a horrendous rollover of a Honda S2000 and I caught it on dash cam, again, in that previous video. That's what inspired me to upgrade this to a much better one that goes above the headrests. But anyway, so there's been an element to this where I haven't wanted to throw it around as much as I used to in my Suzuki Swift Sport because I just don't feel as safe in it. And what do you know, 6 days after having this installed, I was in a crash. Non-fault, someone drove into the front right wheel. It's only minor, I'll show you the pictures now, but at the time when you've got a Land Rover going into your car, well, it reminds you of your mortality, to be honest. So safety is one of the things there. Now, the rest of my subjective opinions are actually going to be covered when we take this out for a drive. So I'm going to stop there and let's finally get this thing out. Before I kill somebody. So how does this car drive? I've given it a real beating, which was not very nice on all the bad sides, but let's talk about the good. Off camera, I've driven all sorts of cool cars. I've been very, very lucky to know a good number of people with very cool cars. And on camera, I've now driven some seriously rare special machines, class-leading hot hatchbacks, etc. Jaguar F-Type, you name it. And honestly, I'm not being that little kind of sour grapes person. When I get back in the MX-5, I'm reminded of how many things it does better than almost everything I drive. Okay, it doesn't have the charismatic straight six engine. It doesn't have a lovely V8. The engine doesn't remind you that you're in something special, but every other thing does. This handles so much better stock than almost everything I've driven. It is ludicrous what it can do. The gear change, the gearbox, amazing. And the only thing that's topped it for me has been the Lotus Exige, but even then, that was actually not very precise. Well, it was easy to get the wrong gear in that gearbox, but when you got there, it felt fantastic. The Caterhams, well, that's a Mk3 MX-5 gearbox anyway, so it feels the same. But it's just legendary. It really connects you with the car. The pedals, every last part, you know, as soon as you touch the brakes, it's on, but not in that horrible over-bitey way that some cars have. It's really communicative, it's instinctive, and it gives you the confidence to really throw this car around and drive hard and brake late, and it's, you know, you brake the right amount. The steering, again, only thing that's beaten it for me are two cars that aren't even hydraulically assisted. It is just spectacular. It's so communicative, it involves you so much of what's going on, and if you've got a Mk3 MX-5 or you've test driven one and you didn't get that, you don't feel that, well, you need a good alignment. I can't express this enough. It's £80 to £100. Go to an MX-5 specialist or someone that knows what they're doing and pay for a fast road setup. The suspension on these cars, as standard, is so adjustable that what Mazda gives you out of the box is to please all the retired couples who just want to cruise down to Dorset and Cornwall. They're not in a race setup. It's night and day, and it's so worth doing. Don't bother doing it if you're about to modify your suspension though. If you're about to really play around with lowering and coilovers and things, you do the alignment at the end. So anyway, you know, this car to me, I've driven it in the company of a Jaguar F-Type and a BMW Z4M. We went for a big old day out, it was brilliant, went to Cafe in a Machine. And okay, those two engines were glorious, and it made me realise what this car is missing in the day-to-day. It doesn't feel special, but we all agreed this handled better than those two cars by a long way. It feels more fun to drive in most other conditions, and actually it did keep up really nicely as well. So that was actually quite surprising. I was expecting it to get left for dead. Overall, my feelings are 2.5 years in, I have fallen out of love with the car before, and let's touch on that actually. So how did I first fall out of love with the car? Well, I bought this as my daily only driver. when I bought it. I didn't actually commute. I walked to work at the time. I'd left the brand, and every single drive was a great sense of occasion. But stupidly, things change, and I started doing lots of videography. I'm a freelance videographer now. So when I didn't have very much kit, I was driving the MX-5 everywhere. It's not great for 3-hour trips on the motorway. It's not really the car you can fit too much into, and it started to become the wrong tool for the job. So my advice is, if you're thinking of dailying one of these, because there are people that do it, just think carefully. If I was just driving to and from work every day for half an hour, I would do this car every day. For big long trips, and you sometimes just want to switch off from the world, it's not always the right car for the job, to be honest. Fortunately, we've come into the Honda Civic, and now driving this is much more of a sense of occasion. When did I fall in love again? Well, the beginning of the year, I took this car for a track day, and it was amazing. I had the car for 2 years, and I could not believe how much of the car I hadn't discovered yet. I've driven it hard in place. I've taken it to Wales a couple of times, and it feels like you're driving around a rally. It's great, but until you take this on track with everything off, and you're sliding around, and you've got the rear end out and all this jazz, it's amazing, and you really, really start to appreciate how well judged this car is from factory. The fact that you can relax and you can take someone with a bad back on a holiday in it for 2 weeks, or you can throw it around a track and it keeps up with all sorts of fun things. It's a masterpiece, honestly. When did I fall back out of love with it again? Well, we moved down to Hastings. We moved somewhere where the roads are crap. It's a really, really busy seaside town. We live in a hill. There's traffic lights and roundabouts everywhere. There's always traffic wherever you go. And really, the roads that lead out of Hastings to take you anywhere are the A21 and the A27. Two busy arteries, the main arteries out of the heart. And they've always just got cars everywhere. So there was a period where I just started to think to myself, why am I having that much fun? Honestly, I'm just following the cars in front. Okay, I'm out in the open, fine. But I just started to think to myself, I do so much video driving. I do so many gigs and things, video gigs where I'm off doing stuff, and I can't take the MX-5. We want to go somewhere, we need to take one extra passenger. Can't take the MX-5. So there have been times where I've kind of talked myself out of it, and I've gone, how many days a year do I have really fun drives in this car, honestly? And I started to fall out of love and look at other things. And very recently, yet again, I said, that's it. I love this car. It's great. It's not you, it's me. We've moved somewhere where an MX-5 doesn't suit. And then I've cleaned it. I've taken a friend out for their first ever drive. They're absolutely howling. They can't believe how much fun this thing is. And it just wakes me up and reminds me how bloody special these things are. And yet, they start life as a blank canvas. There's so much that you can do to them. As long as I just remember to take myself out for more dedicated fun drives more often, go the route you shouldn't go, take the long way. On a Friday night after work, get in the car, beat the traffic, go do something fun. And now that I've started doing that again, it's made me realise it's worth having this car. I touched on modifications, and actually this is something I really wanted to get to actually. So when you join the MX-5 community and you even look at my content, you've got the exhaust and the suspension and whatnot, there's no doubt that you can make these cars even better, even more focused, even more exhilarating. And honestly, I will call it a blank canvas again. It's incredible what you can do with these. And it starts to make you think, oh, well, mine's just a base one. It's got so far to go. But honestly, you could own this car for 5 years without doing a thing, and it will be fun. It'll be more fun than nearly anything else you'll find on the road. You don't need to do anything to it, but you have to get that alignment sorted. It doesn't count as a mod that you have to tell the insurers about because it's all standard parts. It's essential, and it changes this car drastically. Oh, one point on the engine. It is a great engine. I love driving this thing. It puts a smile on my face. It's great fun being able to rev a car out to 7,000 RPM. And I know that with an exhaust or with a little BBR tune or whatever, there's a lot more potential out of this engine. So it is great. and it allows you to relax. But as I said earlier, it just doesn't feel like you're driving something special until you really get the revs up in comparison to a V6 or something. But let's go on to running costs. So what's this thing been like to run for all of these last 2.5 years? Well, as any car or as any sports car goes, really impressively good. You know, a minor service around £100, major service 350, sometimes less. I've spent 200 on a major service, I think. And you know, so upkeep is cheap. When it comes to fuel, I've on long motorway runs and things like that, I've been able to get 40 mpg, 44 across the entire trip, which is really, really impressive. Whatever my driving actually is, when you take into account where we live, stop, start, hills and things, the trip computer always averages out at about 30, let's have a look, 35.5. That's typical. Wherever I go, it'll always come back to about 35.5. Driving this, it costs no more to move this somewhere than it does our Honda Civic. So that's quite a nice feeling. It doesn't seem to throw me surprise bills, and peace of mind is really, really high in this car. I can't remember where I saw the source, but it was somewhere like an Auto Express or a JD Power Survey thing where they'd taken lots and lots of data, and they said that the Mk3 0.5 used MX-5 is the most reliable used sports car that you can buy. It has come out number one. So overall, I really, really enjoy owning this car. Advice to anybody: if you're going to get an MX-5, get one with a limited slip diff, get the sporty setup. It's not punishing, it's still comfortable. And before you spend money modifying suspensions and exhaust and all this stuff, go and do a track day and get tuition. It'll be the best driving experience of your life, and it'll make you realise what these cars can do. They are absolutely superb, and I'm endlessly impressed with them. So anyway, on to the verdict, let's go. And so to conclude the 2.5 year review of the MX-5, well, there's a reason I've held on to it for so long, and there's a reason that every time I nearly sell it, it has enough about it, enough personality that it pulls me back and has me falling for it again. I know often in a group test it's a bit of a foregone conclusion. The MX-5 is the best, you can't beat an MX-5, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, genuinely, as I've said before, the amount of fun cars I've driven, whenever I get back into this, it still has its own qualities that match it or are better in other ways. You know, it really does trade blows with cars of all sorts of backgrounds and costs and things, and you just realise how over-engineered and capable these little things are. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. What else would you have for this kind of money? If you're an owner that's had one for a while, tell me about it. How many years have you had it? Do you still love it? Thank you very much for watching. Love to see you in the next one. Do subscribe and all that jazz, and yeah, we'll see you soon.